Oh wow, I've never seen that plant before, let alone heard of it. I would love to add that plant to my collection. These are some of the phrases that I'm striving to make you all think today in your little plant-obsessed brains. Today I'm going to share with you 5 plants that I feel pretty confident that either you've never heard of or you've never seen before, but more importantly, that you definitely do not have in your home. Mild disclaimer, if you watch my videos regularly or you've seen a lot of my videos in the past, then you've probably heard about most of these plants before because I've talked about them here on my YouTube channel before. But if you don't, or if you haven't, then this is the perfect video for you. And major brownie points for you if you have at least one of these plants in your home, because these are all just really unique houseplants that I just really never see on the plant market or at plant stores. The first one I'm going to talk about today is a houseplant that doesn't even look alive. That's kind of its gimmick. This is my Euphorbia platyclada. I honestly don't know the common name of this houseplant, but I would be hard pressed to believe it doesn't include some kind of combination of like dead stick plant in the name, because that's what it looks like. I've had this one for a couple of years and it was definitely a lot smaller when I got it, but I honestly don't even really remember because this is a kind of plant where you don't really notice it grow because it's not like putting off new leaves, and just from the overall appearance of this houseplant, when it does put off new growth, you just don't notice. And that's kind of a really cool trait for a plant to have. Not many of my plants grow like that, but I will just look at this one like every couple of months and be like, oh crap, you have definitely grown a little bit since I last remember. There are a couple different varieties and species of Euphorbia that do have this like dead plant appearance. I just love this one because it has, dare I say, a little bit more life than some of the other ones. And it's definitely a conversation piece as far as plants go. People quite often ask me, is that actually a plant? Is that actually alive? What the hell is that thing? And I don't blame them for asking all of those questions, because I would probably ask the same thing if I was not a plant collector. And I should point out that this plant is actually flowering right now. I know it's kind of hard to believe. The flowers kind of go along with the dead plant vibe where you don't even really notice them. There's a couple of them growing right here on this tiny little thing. They're super tiny. You can't even really notice them. You definitely don't grow these for their flowers. There's plenty of other Euphorbias that you would grow for their flowers. This is just straight up for the fact that it does not look like a living being. I got this one online from Plant Haven Toronto, and I will include a link in my description if you want to check out their website or get one of these plants for yourself. But let's move on to a plant that actually looks alive and like a houseplant. So this is my Filicium decipiens, commonly referred to as the false fern tree. Emphasis on fern tree and not tree fern. Also emphasis on false, because this is not a fern. This is a false fern tree. Just love how straightforward plant names are. I've only had this plant in my collection for probably no more than 2 years at this point, but it has been such a joy to watch grow over that time, and it really has doubled, if not tripled in size. I love the way that the new leaves grow in. You can see a new leaf right here, as these tiny little leaves are what are going to grow into these leaves right here. These large fronds really do have that like fern or palm frond appearance to them as they grow off the central trunk here. And I've really never seen this houseplant sold in plant stores before. Of course, I bought it somewhere. I bought this from Pepper's greenhouse, which is probably hands down my favorite place to go plant shopping. It's located in southern Delaware, so it's like a 2-hour drive here from Philadelphia, but it is so worth the trip. I will spend more than 2 hours there just looking around. And they have so many unique houseplants that I just don't see anywhere, including the false fern tree. Now, just because this is a hard to find houseplant does not by any means mean it's an expensive houseplant. I think I spent like $7 or $8 on this houseplant. However, I do always say that common plants are common for good reason, because they're easy to grow, and harder to find or rarer houseplants are usually rarer for good reason, because they're harder to grow, which is why they're not oversaturated on the market. Like you'll find spider plants and pothos and other plants that are easy to grow. So that does make me a little nervous about this houseplant. When I was checking out at Pepper's greenhouse, the cashier lady looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Do not forget to water this houseplant." And that has lived in my soul ever since. This is like the first houseplant that I check whenever I'm going around to water my houseplants to make sure it is good on water. And every once in a while, I am a little inconsistent with the watering, which is where you can see we get some of these like brown edges on some of the leaves. So it's not like the most maintainable houseplant out there. It definitely does drop leaves every now and again, but consistent watering is probably the answer to that qualm right there. I was growing this inside of an enclosure inside one of of my glass cabinets for a decent amount of time, but it's been getting a little too big to grow inside those enclosed settings. So I've recently pulled it out in the last couple of months and just growing it out in my home. I was nervous that that lower humidity would do some damage to this houseplant, but it's handling it really, really well. The only thing I noticed with this houseplant in and outside of that glass enclosure is that the mealybugs do love these new leaves. There's a lot of spaces for them to hide as these little tiny leaves are starting to grow into their adult form. So on every new leaf, I just find a couple mealybug. I'll take it in the shower and wipe them off. I try to use houseplant systemics in the soil. I don't know. I live with 200 houseplants and it's just impossible to completely eradicate my pest issues, but it's not bad enough where it's like affecting the health of the plant. I just have to be proactive with it. But I really have some big goals for this houseplant. I want it to grow big. I want it to be a floor plant here in my home at some point. I think it's just got such nice character and a completely different vibe than most of the houseplants that I grow. I just really got to be more consistent with the watering, I guess, but it's just so fun. I love how it literally looks like a little tree with its little trunk right here. A one-of-a-kind houseplant here in my home that just looks completely different than all of the rest. But let's move back into some succulent territory. This is one of my favorite houseplants lately. This is my sperm cactus. Forget the booby cactus and all of those other appendage, it's my nice way of putting it, cacti that are out there. The sperm cactus is the one you were looking for. This literally looks like 1,000 sperm just heading to the egg in the center of the cactus. This is a spineless cactus. I'm kind of having a thing for spineless cacti lately. Although it has one little spine on it, but it's fine. I just don't like plants that like physically harm me or are capable of doing so. So spineless cacti have my name written all over them. I have a couple of them in my home now, but this is absolutely my favorite one. It just has so much character. I feel like this is a houseplant that somebody who's not even remotely interested in houseplants would look at this and think, you know what? Actually, that's pretty freaking cool. I really want to get it in a better planter. This planter is just like a cheap little terracotta planter that's like practically disintegrating at this point, and you can't even really tell it's in there. If I hold it up like this, you can't even see it in the pot. So just need something where it can be shown off a little bit better, but I just love the way it stands out when it's sitting in the little like desert rocks, the Aglaonema. It's really a cute houseplant. It's decently expensive for the size of the plant. You know, with all of those collector cacti out there, I feel like they'll typically run you like $30 to $40, but I feel like it's worth it. It's just so freaking cool. I got this one from Gabriella Plants. I think I did an unboxing of it a while back. And I'll leave a link to their website as well as a discount code in my description if you want to check out what they have as well. Moving back into leafy land, this is one of my favorite houseplants that I have in my home. I don't know why I'm so drawn to this houseplant. I just love it. This is an Aglaonema. I technically don't know exactly what kind of Aglaonema this is. From my research, I've come to the conclusion that I think it's just a plain species Aglaonema pictum. Let me know in the comments if you have any information on that. I got this from the now defunct Glass Houseworks, which was a plant nursery that sold plants online. And while I loved buying houseplants from them because they had such a wide selection, they were notorious for mislabeling their houseplants that they sold. So I bought this as a Aglaonema tricolor echo, which is commonly referred to as the frog skin Aglaonema, but this does not look like that, so I am not quite sure if that's actually what this is, which led me to do some research, which then led me to believe that this is actually an Aglaonema pictum. So just explaining that whole situation there. Regardless, I love this houseplant. I love Aglaonema, which I've recently learned from one of my friends who's a buyer that people actually don't like Aglaonemas. According to her, people often relate them to Dieffenbachias, which, you know what? I agree, I get it. I don't like Dieffenbachias. I think Aglaonemas are much more exciting. Plus they have a lot less of a sordid past in comparison to Dieffenbachia plants, so you always have to appreciate that. But Aglaonemas just come in so many different colors, so many varieties, species, what have it, and there's constantly new ones entering the market, and they're all so beautiful. And this is one of the most plain ones out there, but I just love the simple variegation, the just like slight green splotching that it has throughout this like paler green variegation, and the shape of the leaf. I love that it's like the shape of when you ask a child to draw a leaf. it's basically this exact shape right here. So I don't know why, I just really love this. But another thing I love about Aglaonemas is that when you buy a more collector variety, you're typically only going to get one in the pot. And as they grow, they will put off babies, just like a Sansevieria does. And they put off these offshoots a little bit more actively than most other aroids do, at least in my own experience. So this was just one plant when I got it. It then put off a baby, which I cut back both of those and I'm propagating them right now. They have since put off these two babies, which are newer plants in the pot for me, as you can tell from them only having a couple of leaves. And these are quite actively growing right now. You can see a new leaf coming in right here, and there's a tiny little tip of a new leaf coming in here. So I just love the way that this plant looks now that I've cut it back, and it just looks a lot more fresh. Before it had just like a long stem coming off the side of the planter here. It looked a little bit awkward and was hard to style. I just love this simple Aglaonema, and it's one that I've personally never seen at my local houseplant stores. I mean, the fact that it was mislabeled when I purchased it probably adds to that effect. Aglaonemas are just some of the easiest houseplants to grow. I'm pretty much done bringing new ones home because I have plenty of them in my home, so I need to move on to some other houseplants. But every once in a while, I find a new variety and I'm like, I can't pass that up. I gotta give it a go. So if you ever see this one, I highly recommend trying it. It just brings me so much joy. Maybe it won't bring you joy. Maybe you're one of those people that my friend was talking about that just don't like Aglaonemas, and that's okay. We can agree to disagree. In fact, that just leaves more for me, so I'm fine with it if you don't like them. The last plant we're gonna talk about today is actually sitting in the background on the headboard of my bed, so let me go grab it. The last one I'm gonna talk about today is the adorable Peperomia campylotropa. I also got this one from Glass Houseworks, but I do believe this is properly labeled. This is one that I've never seen sold at houseplant stores before, and Peperomia have just like exploded with variety. When I first got into houseplants, there was only like 10 Peperomia, maybe 15 that you could find on the market if you were lucky. Now, there are hundreds of varieties that you can find, which makes sense because there are thousands of species of Peperomia in nature, so there should be more than 10 to 15 available, but this is just one that I never see. This was a plant that used to be a lot more popular back in the heyday of when the Pilea peperomioides was the it plant, which might not even be something that some of you are aware of. Before the houseplant boom of the pandemic, before the Monstera Thai constellations and the Pink Princess and the Philodendron this, Monstera that were the it plants and the most sought after houseplants out there, the Pilea peperomioides and I guess the fiddle-leaf fig were the two most sought after, most expensive houseplants. Back when I first got into houseplants in like 2015, Pilea peperomioides in a little 2-inch pot was sold online for over $50, which is insane to think about now, that you can find them at your local houseplant stores for probably like $2 to $3 in that size. But back when the Pilea peperomioides was the plant of the moment, people wanted the doppelgangers to the Pilea. So the Begonia conchifolia, the Peperomia polybatria, and of course the Peperomia campylotropa, which I would argue that this is the most adorable Pilea peperomioides doppelganger. I would say it's even cuter than the Pilea peperomioides itself. I just love how compact it stays. I've had this plant for years and it's still this big, but it's put off so many more leaves. It was like a quarter of the size of this when I first got it, but it's still staying remotely the same size. It's not growing up higher. It's not really like spreading around. It's just multiplying. It's kind of hard to even fathom how it's happening, but it's just so interesting. You can kind of see from the back all those little plantlets that are starting to grow in. They all reach forward as I don't turn this plant, so the leaves just stay facing the sun, but I kind of like the way it looks when it's like that. I keep this inside that little glass cloche that you see back there on my headboard, and it just practically takes care of itself. I have it planted inside sphagnum moss, so it stays pretty moist, and just leave it be. I probably pull it out to water it every couple of months, if even. It just stays so moist inside there. This is a plant that needs to be grown inside a terrarium setting. I would not try growing this just out in your home. It really does need that supplemented humidity to grow its best. I think the proof is in the pudding right here. This is one that's been sitting inside a glass cloche for a couple of years now. It just looks so great. The stems, the petioles, look like glass noodles. They're like transparent. It's so neat. Nobody talks about this plant. Nobody grows this plant, nobody sells this plant at their local houseplant stores, so I feel confident that none of you have this plant in your home. But if you do, major brownie points. So just to recap the 5 plants today that I feel pretty confident that none of you have in your home, we have the Peperomia campylotropa, the Aglaonema pictum, Question mark? Let me know in the comments if you have any more information about that. The sperm cactus. We also have the false fern tree, the Filicium decipiens. And of course, last but not least, we have the Euphorbia platyclada. I don't know what the common name of this is, but like I said, it's got to be called like the dead stick plant because that's exactly what it looks like. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let me know in the comments how many of these houseplants you have in your collection, if it's even one. I am a proud plant parent right now. But if it's 0, then good, because that was the goal. I wanted to talk about houseplants that you don't have in your home today. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope you learned something new, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye.